Alright, let's see what this is about.
Nostalgia goggles is a metaphor often used to describe a person's distorted view of how something in the past was actually much worse than they believe it was. Let's use Dragon Ball here as an example. Back when the anime was initially licensed for distribution within North America, the Ocean Group was
Dragon Ball for me is like so nostalgic, man. I remember coming back from school, flipping on the telly when I came home, and watching Dragon Ball. And the thing about Dragon Ball when they put it on the television is that they always played the same episodes every single time. It's like they had like 5 episodes that they just replayed like all the time, and I watched them over and over again. So I've watched like I watched the same episodes of Dragon Ball so many times, man. It's ridiculous, but I loved it. It was great.
Was brought on to dub it into English, with a lot of viewers being introduced to Dragon Ball via that specific cast of voice actors.
Something wrong? You seem like you're under a lot of pressure. What is it? You seem like you're under a lot of pressure.
Later, when Funimation acquired a license to dub that into English, even though the funny dub ultimately ended up being exponentially more
I don't want to watch. No, wait. Yeah, that's what it's all about, boys. All right, let's see what this is all about, though. Okay. All right.
Professional and much closer to the original Japanese translation, people were left of the opinion that the Ocean dub was superior, and as such, many people consider fans of the Ocean dub to be under the effects of nostalgia goggles. This also applies to video games and more specifically MMOs. You've probably heard people continue to reminisce over how amazing Vanilla WoW or maybe even Ion 1.0 were. These were games that were released over a decade ago, back when new MMO releases were common and varied quite significantly in terms of quality. Yet even though there were hundreds of MMOs released between 1995 through 2021, there exist several that truly stood out, that not only captivated the MMO audience, but also went on to stand the test of time. Games like Meridian 59, Tibia, Ultima Online, EverQuest, Anarchy Online, Dark Age of Camelot, RuneScape, Ragnarok Online, EVE Online, Lineage 2, MapleStory, Mabinogi, World of Warcraft, and much more recently, titles like Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, and the Elder Warcraft, and much more recently, titles like Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy.
Okay, so this is a lesson, first of all, how to farm thumbnails on Twitch. And secondly, it's actually kind of crazy how many MMOs there's been. Like, MMOs nowadays are such like a dying genre. It's like there's so many BRs, like shooter games, like MMOs back in my day, brother. It used to be so insanely popular, man. MMOs was like the big thing, and now it's like people don't really bother anymore with MMOs. To be fair though, recently there has been a lot more hype around MMOs, like I guess with Classic WoW coming out, you know, Ashes of Creation, New World, the League MMO that's on the horizon. MMOs are sort of making a little bit of a comeback in terms of the big games, right? And I think, yeah, I do think a lot of this has to do with the esports thing as well. That's very, very true, because it's not very... An MMO is sort of like about the journey and all that. It's not really about like, oh, you go in, you play a game with the boys, like you play some Fortnite, you play some Call of Duty, you know, and you go out. WoW or like Final Fantasy, all those games, you have to really invest yourself. And I think that's why it's like sort of like a dying genre to in a way, right? Let's keep watching this though. Let's see what this is all about.
14 and the Elder Scrolls Online. These are all MMOs that offered experiences of an entirely separate caliber to what was available at the time. Which leads me to the topic of this video. Older MMOs are better than newer MMOs because developers back in the earlier days of the genre's inception cared more about making their dreams a reality. Creating worlds that could stand the test of time. These days, developers care more about creating a game that looks pretty and promises the world, yet fails to deliver any of it. This generation is full of bait and switch MMOs. MMOs created with the sole intention of making as much money as they can before ultimately shutting down. Who here recalls when the free MMO Elite Lord of Alliance shut down? What about when they relaunched as Warlords Awakening?
I don't even know what that is. But this might be a hot take, guys. I think realistic graphics, as cool as they look, for MMOs, it's not the play, man. Okay? I think realistic graphics has like a place in the gaming industry, but I feel like for MMOs, it's just because if you release a game with realistic graphics in 2021, in 2-3 years from now, we're gonna have so much better like development and everything in the game industry that it's gonna look so bad. It ages so poorly, man. Like
requiring players pay to play the game as a buy to play MMO. What about Bless Online's free to play business model across Korea, Japan, and Russia?
Bless Online.
Yet buy to play business model for us over here in the West. Or Stelia Online being free within South Korea and then launching as a buy to play title over here after it failed to achieve success within its country of origin. Now, I'm under no illusion that there were predatory or even downright terrible MMOs developed at the same time as the aforementioned titles. 80, maybe even 90% of MMOs were horrid pay-to-win messes, much the same as they are now. The only difference was back then, we didn't really know any better. I started playing MMOs back in 2007 with Tales of Pirates. This was a game that allowed you to purchase Rage Gems, Colossus Gems, and other items that you could forge into your weapons and armor from the cash shop. Yes, these were items that you could obtain in game as well, but where it could take players days, weeks even, to obtain even a few of these items, you could purchase 100 of them directly from the store for maybe $1,000 and be significantly more powerful than most of the other players on the server. Yet nobody ever really called pay to win, and we continue to play the game, attempting to compete with whales of that magnitude. As that was a PvPvE MMO, it was much more difficult to, granted, and often relied much more on tactics and reaction to really excel. But pay to advance and pay to win were just so prevalent back then that nobody really cared. That is a type of business model that could not exist in today's society, where even pay—
Dude, any of those, if you've ever played any like scuff free-to-play MMO, they are so incredible pay to win. You can legitimately buy anything, man. It is so ridiculous. I had a period where I stopped playing WoW for a little while back in the day, like in Wrath or so, and I started playing a bunch of like random, like different MMOs, like super, like just like free-to-play MMOs, and they were all the same. You played one of them, you played them all. Like, that's all there is to it, man. They are so similar, man. It's crazy. I can't even tell them apart if I saw them now, probably. Most private servers also had pay-to-win mechanics. That's true. Very true. Which is a big reason why I never really played a lot of those private servers. The only private server I really played was Nostarius and Kronos. And yes, of course there was still pay-to-win. Of course you could still buy shit. Like, but it was like, that was like, you know, below the counter, whatever the fuck, right? But it's like, you want stuff to really matter in a way, and you want stuff to you want to make sure that the things that you farm in game is something that other people will have to farm as well, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to play in like some random server where like, oh, you can pay $100 for Shadowmourne, or you can pay $50 for Ashbringer or something like that, right? Like, whatever. So let's keep watching here, guys.
Paying for an XP scroll is considered by a large percentage of players as pay to win. Disregarding the inherent problems with pay to win in Tales of Pirates, you know what the game did right? Everything else. It offered players a large open world. The only loading screens that were present were if you went through an instance to a dungeon, or you needed to travel to another continent via teleport. You could freely run around the entire world on foot. You could even sail to different continents manually via ship. There were various different classes, a sense of progression. Heck, it even presented one of the greatest types of PvPvE I have ever experienced. PvPvE dungeons and raids. Dungeons and raids were open to all players, allowing for—
This is something that's really cool about Vanilla WoW 2, is like the open world bosses. It's not really like a dungeon, I guess, but it is like, you know, Kazak, Doomlord Kazak, Asurgos, like the World Dragons, all of those. Unironically, in terms of my experience, that's some of the most memorable stuff. Having like 40 versus 40 like big battles in an open world, like fighting over a boss that's like roaming around, is so cool.
Hire guilds to attempt to defeat dungeon and raid bosses while fighting off other guilds. This presented so many opportunities for guilds to make alliances with other guilds, formulate strategies to secure raid kills, and meant that the community was more important than almost anything else in the game. Your reputation in that game was your life.
Oh my god.
If you did something, everyone on the server—
Okay, sorry. Whenever I watch a Final Fantasy boss fight, I feel like half the screen is just explosions, man. I'm like watching a Michael Bay movie, dude. Like, holy cow. What's even going on? Is this just me? Oh my god.
Never knew. If you defeated another guild in a dungeon, everyone would know. This was, in my opinion, one of the
Christmas
most
lights.
amazing PvPvE systems that I had ever experienced, and something that I have not had the pleasure of experiencing
Oh my
since.
gosh.
Now, comparatively speaking, MMOs these days just don't do anything remotely innovative like that.
Yeah.
What MMOs have released in the last 4 years? Bless Online, DK Online, Guardians of Ember, Warlords Awakening,
What?
Soul Worker,
What?
Closers,
What?
Critica,
What?
PSO2 New Genesis,
What?
Swords of Legends Online,
Who?
Maple Story 2,
I know
Bless
that.
Unleashed, Astelia Online, Crowfall, and you know what? Probably a few others that
I don't know half of these games. Oh, what the hell? Heck it, flip it. I don't know 90% of these games. Oh my god.
I've missed, but that's because they left such a negligible impression on me
Yeah.
that I don't even recall their release. Out of all of the
Same.
MMOs released over the last several years, do you know how many of them retain over 10,000 concurrent players? None. Bless Online shut down. DK Online had a 24-hour peak of 4 players playing. Guardians of Ember shut down. Warlords Awakening shut down. Soul Worker had a 24-hour peak of approximately 5,000 players. Closers had a 24-hour peak of 100 players. Critica had a 24-hour peak of 200 players. New Genesis had a 24-hour peak of a little shy of 7,000 players. Swords of Legends Online has been struggling to maintain above 4,000 concurrent active players. Maple Story 2 shut down. Bless Unleashed just launched, so it's really too early to say. Astelia Online shut down. Crowfall. Well, you can Google around for the drama surrounding that game right now. The reason
I think a big reason why a lot of these games just don't do well is because for an MMO, at least from my perspective, for me to want to sink my time and invest myself into a game, I have to care about the lore and the story and the world to a certain degree. A big reason why WoW did so well in the original release was because we had Warcraft 3, we had Warcraft 2, we had Warcraft 3. We already knew who Arthas was. We already knew about Illidan, Kel'Thuzad. Like, we knew all the characters. And like, when are we gonna see Kel'Thuzad? When are we gonna see, like, where's Illidan? Where's Arthas, right? Like, we wanted to see the characters in the world.
MMOs have failed is down to the fact that at the end of the day, they're just not doing anything to set themselves apart from the rest of the competition. Who wants to spend their time in a new tab target MMO with worse combat than WoW or Final Fantasy XIV, not to mention a fraction of the total content? Or better yet, who wants to dedicate their life to a game that's entire end game consists of running the same single raid and 2 dungeons? Because let's be honest here, new MMOs all have the very same issue when they launch. They do not really have much, if any, endgame content at all.
That's what I'm scared about New World for. I don't know what the New World endgame is gonna be. I assume it's gonna be very, like, profession and PvP orientated, but I'm just so scared that I'm not gonna enjoy the endgame at all. Like, if anything, right? Because, like, the endgame in an MMO has to be good. It has to matter. Fighting over maps, yeah, I think that's probably what it's gonna be, right? And I feel like that's gonna be metagamed really hard, because, like, there's 3 factions, right? And you can only do certain things if your faction control the areas, right? So we're gonna have to see what's gonna happen with New World. I really hope it does stand up though, right? We'll see.
MMOs slowly build up content as they continue to exist. Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, The Elder Scrolls Online, they weren't all filled with endless time sinks like they currently possess, yet players expect new MMO releases to have the same level of content. I mean, let me take a moment here to impose this question. Would you stick around in a game when there is nothing to do once you hit level cap? You wouldn't, right? You'd grow bored rather quickly, and you'd move on to something that can retain your attention. New MMOs won't be able to do that. Not to the same degree already pre-existing established games can, which...
MMOs are about progression. That's what it's all about. It's about progressing your character. If it's leveling, professions, dungeons, raids, getting better gear, you know, getting an ERP girlfriend, whatever it is, whatever you like, whatever your goal is in the game, like, it's about progressing your character or, like, progressing your game. And if the progression is not fun or it stagnates, it's not fun anymore, right? You want to keep progressing. That's also why a lot of people end up raid logging in WoW, for instance, right? Because, like, oh, well, I've done my progression. Like, now I'm just gonna raid or raid log or whatever, right? It happens quite a lot, even with WoW. So yeah.
leaves the games and subsequently their worlds entirely barren. But the reason for this is because, once again, the MMOs specifically are doing nothing innovative to set themselves apart from the rest of the genre. If an MMO legitimately provided something exponentially different to anything else available, people would flock to it in droves. Take Black Desert as an example. Black Desert is arguably one of the best looking MMOs in the genre. It also has some of the best action combat within the genre to date, but is a pretty game with fun combat enough to warrant the active participation of millions of players, especially given that it's a buy-to-play MMO. BDO offers.
Honestly, I've never played this game. It looks pretty cool though. Like at the end of the day, I would probably give it a try. If one day I get really bored of WoW, right, and I wanna, yeah, I mean, if you look at the, if you look at a lot of MMOs, right, like you have to care about what's going on, and you have to really, stuff has to matter, right? So I think he's definitely making a really good point here. I think so.
And appealing aesthetic that truly make this game a remarkable experience. An enormous world filled with content, varying monsters, things to see, exploration, world bosses, PvP, life skills, sailing, the sheer freedom to do what you want at pretty much your own pace without the overwhelming pressure of remaining competitive by running weekly raids with groups of players to keep up with the item level grind is something more developers should take note of. By providing players so many unique facets, so many different methods to entertain themselves, they've created a game, a world for players to enjoy that is different to the traditional MMO formula. But the vast majority of MMOs, and by association MMO developers,
look at the graphical difference, man. Holy cow. You go from this and you get to like a little I don't know, a little green field.
MMO developers no longer seem to possess the same levels of passion that developers from decades ago did. During the genre's inception, every developer wanted to bring their vision to fruition. They wanted to leave their mark on the genre. They wanted to build on it, establish themselves as one of the founders, to have their name, their game go down in history, to leave a legacy. And many MMOs did. Many developers did. Richard Garriott, Raph Koster, Brad McQuaid, Jeff Kaplan, and even the legendary voice of Thrall himself, Chris Metzen, are all people that instantly spring to mind. Their passion, their visions, helped shape the entire genre that we're all a part of today. Take a look at MMOs released within the last decade and tell me how many of the names of the developers you recognize. Now, this is not a direct attack on new MMOs or current generation developers. There are some fantastic ideas in place like Blue Protocol, Ashes of Creation, New World, Riot's League MMO, and Arcade 2 coming in the future. These MMOs might revolutionize, might revitalize the genre. They might offer something entirely different that takes the genre by storm, leaving all of the competition in the dust. It's unlikely, but it is definitely plausible. The passion that was once a major selling point for the genre just does not seem to really be present anymore, which kind of echoes throughout the player base as well. Players are, more or less, sick of new MMOs because they're just so generic. They last a week, maybe a month if we're lucky, and then they just go and fade into memory. MMORPGs just no longer seem to possess that same sense of longevity that they once did, and that's a shame. In 2021, moving into 2022, the MMOs that I am actively playing are Final Fantasy XIV, which released back in 2013, Guild Wars 2 that released back in 2012, and the odd free MMO here and there merely to obtain footage for videos. That is the state.
I think that's why maybe like it's really the same thing. Like people have to care about the MMO they're playing. You know, they have to care about the lore. It's a really important part about the thing. You have to care about the universe, right? Maybe in a bit, Thigatron, I'll be down to do something. I have to do something a little bit later here actually for some normals and stuff. But yeah, it's like, you know, you have to care about the game. You have to care about the lore and the story and everything
that the genre is in right now. There's just nothing that really captivates or truly excites players at this point, or in the immediate future. Genshin managed to for a few months, and while there are still millions of active players playing that game, at the end of the day, we all want a new MMO to play. Blue Protocol, Tower of Fantasy, Ashes of Creation, New World, maybe something entirely new, yet unannounced, who knows. But at the end of the day, The reason we are all playing old MMOs like WoW, like RuneScape, like Final Fantasy XIV is because they are just better than their newer alternatives. There's absolutely no discussion, no argument that could prove otherwise.
Oh my god, what was that? That was a very sudden fucking outro, man. Oh my god. But yeah, that happened like very suddenly. Jesus, MMOs are like a dying genre, right? It is a dying genre because a lot of people just prefer other ways to play games, and let's be honest, a lot of people don't want to invest like months on months of time on one character, right? People want to get inside a game, bing bong bang, like real fast, like bing bong bang it up, and then just move on, right? That's just how it is for a lot of people, I believe. So yeah, right. It's hard to really to really make a good MMO these days.